Welcome to the Passive Income Machine podcast, where we show you how to break free from the grind and achieve real financial freedom in 10 years or less. My name is Ryan D. Lee, and I've helped thousands turn income into cash flow, trade fake money for real assets, and take back control over their time, their wealth, and ultimately their life. Each week, you'll get strategy, tools, and mindset to build your own passive income machine. So my friends, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode. All right, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, you are on the Passive Income Machine podcast with me, Ryan D. Lee, and my real estate cash flowing expert, Scott Saunders. Scott, you want to say what's up to everyone, my friend?
Hey, what's up? Going to be exciting. Can't wait to get into this topic.
You know what? This topic is an interesting one today. A core part of our philosophy, a core part of our investment strategy is real estate, right? And, you know, there's always debate about real estate, and I find it helpful to be able to understand the type of real estate that we're talking about. You know, when people talk about real estate, that could be anything from, you know, multi-unit apartment complexes all the way down to storage units, from office buildings all the way down to single-family homes, from fix and flip, you know, all the way to what else would be a store, whatever. You know, there's so many different forms of real estate. And, you know, what we found is one of the easiest, most boring ways to make money in real estate, especially when we're talking about passive money, is turnkey real estate. I don't think we get a lot of accolades for that. You know, most people think that being Grant Cardone and, you know, taking down a big apartment complexes, that's the sexy thing to do. And for some people it might. I mean, I know you're good buds with Ken McElroy, and that dude's taking down units like crazy. But for me, I like the simplicity. I mean, I'm a simple guy, Scott. You know, I just want money coming in. I want assets that get, you know, more valuable over time. And I like the simplicity of single-family homes. Why do you think we focus so much on single-family homes, especially turnkey single-family homes?
Well, I think for two reasons. One, they're accessible. You know, how many people can scrape together the down payment and have the expertise to take down an apartment building for $20 million? A few people can. If you're a high earner, you got experience. Most people can't do it. You got unique financing. You're competing against the big institutional players. Single family homes, they're all over the country, and they're pretty reasonable at a price point. Now, why I like turnkey, what the attraction for me, I was a busy working professional. I love the idea of having somebody else go in, take an asset, spruce it up, freshen it up, update the kitchen, the bathrooms, get the brand new roof on, put new paint on it. And now they have an asset that is really kind of nice, one that I feel proud to own, proud to have somebody in. And they did all the work, and I just get the benefit of coming in and buying something that looks really nice. That I look at it and I go, that's an attractive house. I could live there if I needed to, and I feel good renting it. And then they actually, a lot of times, will line up the relationship for the property management. So almost everything I own is not in the state that I live in. I have one property where I live in Colorado, and it's a home in the mountains. So all my rentals are outside. They're in other markets in the Midwest and Southeast and other places. So for me, for busy working professionals, having a turnkey where somebody did all that, and Ryan, I'll add the last piece, I'm not mechanically inclined at all. I can barely change a light bulb. Right? My kids will tell you I am just not good at that. So some people are really good at getting in and being handy and laying tiles and doing all that. It's not my skill set. So I would really be a horrible person trying to fix up a house and do all that work. And I think some people are really good, and there are other people that maybe just don't have that. And even if they're good at it, who has the time to come back, work a full-time job, go visit your kids at their soccer games and their plays and everything, and then try and squeeze in late at night or on weekends doing all that fix-up. So for me, having somebody else who's got the expertise doing all that, I am happy to come in and take advantage of that skill that they provide and have that final product. So turnkey for real estate, when I discovered that through you, I was so relieved to know that there were good quality properties that I could just pick up, and they'd either have a tenant about ready to move in or lined up to do that, and now I could just pick up the asset. They did all the heavy lifting, and I come in with that nice finished product. So I love turnkey real estate for that. And then I love it because we all need it. We need a place over our heads. You mentioned some of the different types. Look what happened in COVID with office buildings. I saw office buildings that were worth big numbers go way down in value because people were starting to work from home, and there just wasn't as much demand to be in the office. So that's the other benefit of a single family home, is everybody needs a roof over your head. And most people would prefer to live in a house, have a backyard, a place for the dog, the kids to have a little place to run around, a garage to store your car. Most people prefer that over apartment living, which, might be a place where you have to live, but nobody wants to live in an apartment type facility year after year. That's just not high on anybody's bucket list, but most people do want a backyard with a little barbecue and the peace and quiet. Whether you own it or you rent it, it just gives you a better quality of experience, and you're going to connect more with the neighbors. They're just, you got a little flower garden, you can plant stuff. That's just a better asset class. So I think there's just a lot more demand for it, in America, and there always will be.
You know what, you talk about demand, and I think, when we talk about this idea of financial freedom and a future income stream, one of the things that we have to really consider is the longevity of the asset class that we choose. How long can that asset class remain in demand? How long will it produce income for me? Does that income rise with inflation? There's so much that goes into future-based income planning that it can be a little bit overwhelming. And one of the things that you mentioned is this continual demand for single-family homes, for rental real estate. And I've always known it generally to be true. And, in the years we've always taught people moving out of apartments, I generally have thought about that in the past as me. When I first got out of college, my wife and I, we lived in an apartment for a couple of years. We scrimped, we saved, we worked really hard. And, once we had enough money, we bought our first house. But many people, for one reason or another, are choosing to rent homes as their careers are on the rise, right? For flexibility, for lower maintenance, they can't qualify, they don't have enough money for a down payment, lots of reasons, right? I think a lot of people would assume that most of the renters are probably in their working years. Recently, a statistic came out that I thought was pretty surprising, pretty telling. And there's probably a lot of data and reasons behind this. But Scott, if you had to take a guess, what would be the largest rental population? Like if we just tried to pick a demographic, is it the young people coming out of college? Is it the middle-aged American? Is it the older person, maybe in retirement? What would be the biggest renter contingency in our nation, according to what you would believe?
Yeah, my gut would first tell me that younger population, people that have gotten out, their 20s, early 30s, that would be my gut instinct. That would be kind of the prime big pool.
You're going to be shocked. Because that was my instinct as well. From 2013 to 2023, the largest growing demographic of renters are 55 plus. In fact, 65 plus added 2.4 million renters to the rental pool, and these are single-family home renters. So these aren't condos, they're not apartments. These are people choosing to sell their home, choosing to move, choosing to do whatever they're doing, but they're living in a rental home during their retirement years at age 65 plus. It was the largest growing demographic in demand for rental homes, and I was pretty surprised by that. And I was actually pretty pleased by that too, because generally when we think about renting homes, when I first got into the rental game back in the beginning, I wanted to rent my home to a family, right? I wanted kids in there, I wanted parents in there, I wanted their kids to go to school. I wanted them to become fixtures of the community, so they would likely want to stay in the house longer. But what I've also learned is, you've had kids, I've had kids. Kids are destructive. Kids oftentimes come with pets. Pets are destructive. Kids break things. Every time there's a turnover in a house with kids and family, there's a lot of maintenance expense that goes with that, right? And so it's a more costly demographic to rent to, generally speaking. When you think about 65-year-old plus people, are they throwing rager banger parties on the weekend, or what are they kind of doing? And what kind of care are they taking care of the property on? Hey, just jumping in here for 1 second. I really hope you're digging this episode and seeing massive potential for your future. But look, none of this happens without the How to Retire in 10 Years Summit. It's the financial freedom event you absolutely cannot miss this year. We're talking about step-by-step strategies for passive income, financial independence, and total control over your money in 2025. Early registration is happening right now with an exclusive bonus for acting fast. So stop waiting, click the link below, or go to retireintenyears.com, and I'll see you on the inside. Now, back to the show.
No, they're way more responsible. In fact, they may even have some skills where they can fix up something. You bring that up. My longest tenant ever was somebody in that demographic. She rented for me for 15 years in a condo in Florida, one-bedroom condo. And she was my first tenant, and she stayed with me for 15 years. And she was the type of person where if the door needed to be painted, she just would get the paint and paint it herself. And so it was a great relationship because she knew she had somebody who was a good landlord, who was fair and reasonable. I kept the rents a little bit lower because she was so great, took care of all that little stuff. So I'd probably rather have someone in their 50s in there taking good care of it. Maybe has a little pride. They probably have some nice furniture. They probably keep the place up. Probably not going to be torn up quite as much as teenagers that are, banging into walls and doing all the things that teenagers do. So that's a really, really interesting statistic that's the biggest demographic. Why do you think that is? What are your thoughts as to why that change has kind of taken place?
Well, this article actually cited several reasons, and I'm going to come to those reasons here in just a moment. But the thing I want to point out with that is the demand for rentals is always there, right? A single family home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, garage, middle America, nice house, that kind of thing, whether it's in an expensive neighborhood or not, just that having your own space, having your own location, having your own place to store things, that is an asset that is always in demand. When we look back at what you said, Scott, what happened during COVID with office spaces, I think generally speaking, people would say offices are always in demand. We learned that things could change. But if we come back to just a fundamental human need, humans don't necessarily always need an office to work in, as evidence, but humans always need a place to live. In fact, my wife and I right now, we always try to have a bedtime show. And recently we started up the bedtime show. I've never watched this before, but it's like addicting. But have you ever watched the series Alone?
No, not at all. No.
It's the best and the worst. Half the time I want to say, hey, I'm going to go try out for that one. Right now I'm watching there's 10 people trying to survive in Vancouver. The first thing that they do when they get on this island all by themselves is they try to set up their shelter. How do they get themselves safe, secure, away from the elements, away from the animals, have a place to sleep? That's the first thing that they do. That is a fundamental human need. And so one of the reasons that I personally love single-family homes is it's not always self-evident that people will need a place to store their crap. It's not always self-evident that people will need a place to go work, but it is always self-evident that they will need a good place to live. So that's number one. Number two, to get back to your question, there were a few different reasons that cited, but one of the reasons I just want to point out, they cited one of the main reasons for this demographic not just wanting to be in rental real estate, but actually needing to be in rental real estate is they didn't have enough money to stay retired. And oftentimes the largest form of wealth that people have is in their home. And one of the biggest challenges of having your wealth in your home where you live in is it's really hard to tap that equity without raising your expenses. So it's hard to spend your equity in the home that you live in to be retired and also stay living in the home that you live in. And so one of the main reasons driving this influx of people going from home owners to home renters in the age 65 category was they sold their home to fund their retirement. And part of funding their retirement was unlocking that equity, not to buy another house, but say, hey, if I have $200,000, that $200,000 added to my $200,000 IRA, that's all I got for retirement. That was the main reason behind it. What are your thoughts on that bigger picture behind what's driving this demographic shift?
Well, it's kind of a depressing picture, isn't it? You work hard your whole life, and now you build up this little asset of a house, and you're like, well, I got to sell it, and then you got to draw it down over time. So to me, it's interesting to have that demographic, but if I look at the future, it's not very exciting to go, wow, I worked really hard, diligently, bought something, paid it off, maintained it for all those years, and then my whole exit strategy, my whole game plan now is to just take that amount that I sell it for, which probably is a decent amount, and then for my time that I'm around, I'm just going to have to draw that down, and try and do it as slowly as I can. That's not really what I consider an exciting retirement. You see pictures of people traveling and golfing and visiting the grandkids and taking family vacations, and when I think of that, I think of maybe more of a kind of a scarcity approach, right? My whole focus now is just trying to keep my costs kind of low and keep it as low as it can be. So that's kind of what I interpret in that.
You know what? Here's the thing that's happening right now. We've known about this for years, but right now, this baby boomer generation is in the process of transitioning out of the workforce into full retirement. And that's been going on for the last 20 years. The last baby boomer that's going to retire, I think it's in October. I think it's in October in 2032. It's something like that. So by 2032, every one of the baby boomer generation, the largest generation that has defined American economics for the better part of the last 70, 80 years, all of them are now being retirement. They're all going to be drawing down whatever retirement accounts that they have, tapping into fully Social Security, drawing on an already bankrupt account. And this is just a sign of the lack of financial preparedness that people have going into this stage of their life. Now, it's not all the individual's fault, right? The economy has turned upside down on its head. Cost of living have gone through the roof. Medical expenses, especially in the future during retirement, are more expensive than pre-retirement. And, the market has just been volatile. Everyone pretty much says the market does 7% or 8%. That's what the market does, but that's not what the individual gets. After taxes and inflation and market-based fees, the average individual is earning a couple percentage points in the market. And this is the primary vehicle that people are using to fund their retirement. And so when it comes down to this, what I look at all of this is, number one, I'm grateful I own rental real estate. It's an asset that is always in demand. Specifically, not just rental real estate, simple single-family homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, predominantly in middle America, managed by other people, done by the turnkey company. So I'm grateful that I own that. I'm also grateful that today I'm 40, what am I? I'm 46. I've been thinking differently about money now for the better part of almost 15 years. You have for the better part of your entire life. And we're working with a community of people that are looking to this generation, right? These baby boomers, and saying, that can't be me. I don't want to retire and the only asset that I have is a piddly 401k and equity in my home. I don't want that. And so people are now starting to look at this system, and I believe the cracks that have been pretty well hidden over the last 10, 15, 20 years, they're starting to become exposed, right? Social media, the internet, it's just harder to hide everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly that's going on. And if it's harder to hide, then more people are becoming aware. So, Scott, what would you recommend someone do with this awareness that there's more baby boomers than ever, 65 plus older people renting? What should someone in their 30s, 40s, and even their 50s be doing with this knowledge and information?
Well, what you should do is you should take action and maybe realize the traditional plan's not going to work very well, and do something different than that. I know a lot of people in their 40s and 50s that are kind of seeing it. They're within spitting distance of retirement of those years. You can still change it in a short period of time, right? You can reallocate how you're investing. You can make changes to make sure you're not going to be one of those statistics that is forced to kind of draw down your home equity and live that way. So I'd say number one is get a financial education and follow our podcast and get some books, some of these books out there that we talk about and read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and some of these other things, and go, what do I need to do differently? Because if you follow the herd, you're probably going to end up being a part of that general statistic. If you want to be that small percentage that has a really good outcome, then you want to find out, what is that percentage doing? What are they doing differently? Change what you're doing today so that you can begin to move over in that category. So some of it's education, some of it is then taking action and making some action today with how you invest and what type of investments you make and how you think about money. Start making those changes now, and that'll change your outcome, whether it's 5 years, 10, or 15 years down the road. That's the only way to really make sure you're not part of that general demographic, is by making a change and doing things differently.
I love that, Scott. That's a perfect place to end today, because you're 100% right. The sum total of our life today, the good, the bad, the ugly, is a reflection of the decisions that we made likely 3 to 5 years ago. Maybe sometimes a little bit longer than that. But usually our life is a reflection of the habits that we have. And the habits that we have define the path that we're on. And if we don't like where the path is leading us, one of the best things you can do as a human being with a prefrontal cortex who can look into the future is look into the future. Look into their future and learn from the lessons that you see of other people's lives. And if you're following the same path that they're following, expecting a different outcome, Einstein has some words for you. It might just be the definition of insanity. So Scott, we're here to help empower people with money. And one of the best things you can do with being empowered with money is implement your passive income machine. What would your life look like? What would it feel like, and what would it be like if you owned real estate, not just your primary residence, but you actually were a provider of 15 to 20 of those single-family homes that are in massive demand right now by a population that needs a wonderful place to live? What if you were the one that were able to fulfill that? Not only will you be meeting their need, but you'll be making a different future for yourself. So if that incentivizes, if that motivates you, and if that intrigues you, not only follow this podcast, do something about it. Reach out to us, come attend our free summit, and start getting in the ownership economy. Own assets and change your life. Scott, my friend, thank you for joining me on this podcast today. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to host the Passive Income Machine podcast with you today. Have a good day today, Scott. All right, my friends, that's a wrap for today. If you're serious, though, about turning everything we talked about into your new reality, there's only one place you need to be. It's the How to Retire in 10 Years Summit. This is your chance to learn exactly how to unlock financial freedom and build passive income in 2025. Early registration is live right now with an exclusive bonus for our early action takers. Don't miss out. Head to the link in the show notes or just head on over to retireintenyears.com and I'll catch you at the summit.